listening to the Departure Lounge podcast with your hosts, Tom Whittle and Ger Dooley. Your ticket to the home of aviation podcasts.
It's Sunday night, and you know what that means. A very warm welcome, everybody, to what is episode 17 of the Departure Lounge podcast here on the Departure Lounge YouTube channel, and of course on Spotify as well. If you're listening, a very good evening / morning / afternoon to yourself. My name is Tom Whittle, and joining me this evening is not Joe Dooley. We'll get onto that shortly, but stepping in on his behalf is Ian Hartley. Ian, welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 17, and thank you very much for stepping in.
Hey, welcome. You're welcome. Short notice, Tom, but thanks for inviting me on.
Not a problem. So anybody that's wondering where Joe is, he hasn't shown up. Basically, we for those that want to know what happens behind the scenes, we go on a call about 10-15 minutes before the show, and Joe simply hasn't shown up. So he's not with us this evening. So yes, hopefully, I'm sure he'll be back with us at some point, but we will find out where he's gone and report back from there, really. But apart from that, Ian, how are you this evening?
I'm very well. I'm good, thanks, Tom. Like I say, it's I'm sort of brushing up on a few bits and pieces as we're going along, but I'm good, Tom. Are you?
Yeah,
you all right?
Bad. Yeah, not too bad myself. Good. Not too bad. Thankful that the weather's kind of cooled off a little bit, but
I was just going to mention that.
not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah.
But yes. So tonight we are discussing the illustrious career and history of the Boeing 747, the Queen of the Skies, which we'll get onto shortly. But we want your opinions, we want your experiences, and we also want your memories of the Queen of the Skies. So get them into the chat, and we will read them out throughout the show this evening. But let's get into some sort of housekeeping to begin with. So firstly, we are on Spotify, as I mentioned. So there's a link in the description below. If you wish to take us sort of anywhere with you, if you want to, if you go out for a run, go out for a walk, or you're just going out, or just doing anything, we are on Spotify now, so you listen back to every episode that we have done so far. Also, you can subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and at the same time, you can follow us on our social medias such as Twitter and Instagram at the Departure Lounge YT for YouTube. Follow us there for sort of all the updates and basically to keep up with what we're doing, really. Also, not in the direction of the channel sponsor, airspotters.com, who continue to provide fantastic service with everyone's modelling sort of needs. So definitely worth checking them out. Got a link in the description below as well. And of course, if you wish to be a guest on the podcast at any time that you feel you're free, all you gotta do is drop us a message, and we'll get you on sort of as soon as we can. But that is it. So, shall we do this?
Yep, ready when you are.
Fantastic. Now, before we do anything, I did mention in the sort of advertising tweets and Instagram stories that there is a huge announcement that we'll want to sort of get out to you. Now, we were going to save it for the end of the show, but we're going to sort of do it now, and then we'll reveal it again at the end of the show for those that are sort of joining a little bit late. So we've got a special midweek show. This Wednesday is when we're doing episode 18 for a very, very special reason. Now, we were reached out to by this chap, and I'm very, very excited. We're very excited to be able to have the chance to speak to him. So Wednesday evening, we are going to be on at 7:30 UK time. We're going to be talking to the one and only Jeb Brooks. Jeb Brooks will be joining us on Wednesday on the podcast to talk about his travel blog and his YouTube, and just having a chat about all things aviation. And I'll tell you what, Ian, I'm super excited for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's got a massive following on YouTube, so yeah, it should be a really, really good. It should be a good show, that, and it might be a change as well doing it midweek.
It
quite
will be
unusual,
different,
won't it?
It will be very different doing it midweek. But this is huge for us, and we are very much looking forward to welcoming Jeb Brooks onto the show on Wednesday evening at 7:30 p.m. UK time. So very much looking forward to that. But we will probably announce that again towards the end of the show for anyone that's joining late. But now should we get into it?
Yeah, I'm ready when you are now.
Sweet. Before we do,
I'm just brushing up on something while you were talking as well at the same time. I just got sidetracked off something.
No, it's all right.
Sorry.
It's that last minute sort of thing. But that's all good. But yes, so what we'll do is we'll jump into the chats first, and then we'll jump into sort of the first topic really. So we have Samuel Taylor Ackroyd, who says hello. So good evening to you as well.
Good evening
to you rather. Excuse me, I've not long had my dinner. Steve Plains, who was on the show last week, says hi both. Looking forward to this. Thank you for joining us, Steve. It was great having you on last week. Very, very informative. Samuel Taylor.
Let me just apologise to. Sorry, can I just apologise to Steve for accidentally calling him? I pressed the wrong button on my phone today. I had this problem last week, so I'm at it again.
Samuel Taylor Ackroyd says, seriously, Jeb Brooks? Seriously, the Jeb Brooks will be joining us this Wednesday coming.
This Wednesday.
So, very much looking forward to that. Marco Barrett says, evening, gents. So, evening to you. And Rob Brown says, evening, guys. So, very good evening to you. But, yes. Right, now we'll jump into it. And we'll jump into the 747 and start to discuss everything about her history. So, everyone loves the 747. So she was formally announced in 1960, I believe, and then launched in 1966 with the first flight coming on I've spelled February wrong. I've just seen that. That's my fault.
It was in February.
Oh dear, yeah, February, yeah. February 9th, 1969 was when it had its first flight. Starting off with the 100 series, of course. Now, as we all know, after introducing the 707 in 1958, Pan Am wanted a jet that was 2.5 times its size, and also to reduce its seat cost by 30% to democratize air travel. So that's kind of really the whole idea behind the 747, was because they wanted something a bit bigger, and air travel was on the rise sort of in the 60s, it was sort of known as like the golden age of
definitely the golden era, weren't it?
The golden age of flying and things like that. So in 1965, Joe Sutter left the 737 development program that he was working on at the time to design the 747, which would be the first twin-aisled airliner. And in 1966, once Pan Am sort of had their requirements sort of met, they ordered 25 Boeing 747-100 aircraft, and these were with the Pratt & Whitney JT9D engines. So proper screamers, massively screamers, and 168 of these 747-100 aircraft were built across across 3 different variants, as we can see it on the screen. So you've got obviously the passenger version, which is just the standard 100. You have got the Boeing 747-100B, and you've also got the 747-100 SR, which is sort of a short range version for sort of the Asian market. Now we'll jump onto those in a second. But yeah, Ian, quite a revolutionary sort of plane, and also quite the risk as well. Obviously, nearly putting Boeing out of business as well, building this.
I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, they had a lot of teething difficulties and what have you, didn't they, with it? And it wasn't. I mean, I don't think the aeroplane was conceived as how it looks now with the the lump on the roof and things like that. Because at one point, I think they were going to develop a proper 2-deck aircraft, sort of like a 380 type design, weren't they?
That was right. Yeah.
And then they had to flatten a forest, didn't they, and build the Everett plant, didn't they, to build the 747. So the infrastructure and the massive outlay, what Boeing had to lay out, and like you say, it more or less brought them to the knees, didn't it, back in its day? So yeah, it was a massive risk, and thankfully it paid off for them.
Thankfully it did. Otherwise, it'd be interesting to see what kind of state the airline industry would be in had this sort of not, pardon the pun, but taken off sort of thing, and see if Airbus would be sort of as successful as they are. Would they be sort of the huge players and everybody chasing them, and everything else? So yeah, it was quite a risk and one that paid off in the end. And they sort of, like I said, it nearly brought them to their knees, and they had to sort of make sure that it did pay off.
It had to work, didn't it?
Ultimately. So the 747-100 entered service in 1970, of course, for Pan Am, like we said, sort of the rest is history in terms of how successful it became. So yeah, like I said, 168 were built, and what we'll do is we'll jump onto the B version of the 747-100, which was designed or developed from the 100 SR, using its stronger airframe and landing gear design. Now this also had a increased fuel capacity, allowing for a 5,000 nautical mile range for a typical 450 odd passenger payload. And Iran Air were the first to receive them, and also were sort of the last ones to operate these ones. So it's almost like first in, last out sort of thing. Again, operated with the Pratt & Whitney JT9D engines, and only 9 were built. One for Iran Air, and then 8 of them were built for Saudi Arabian Airlines. So that to me is a bit of a shock, because I thought that Iran Air were sort of the biggest operator of them, but it turns out they only had the one.
Yeah, it's an unusual. I mean, why would it need, a stronger airframe and a different landing gear design? I don't know. Is it just because of the kind of terrain they're flying from, with it being so hot or something? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem necessary in my eyes that they actually had to. Maybe that's why they only sold 9 of them, because I don't think it was necessary. Because it would have cost more money to, to redevelop it and to redesign it and things like that. And I just don't understand why they would need a variation of what was already a successful long haul plane.
Yeah. So basically, like we sort of, or like I said at the beginning, the B version was derived from the 747 SR, which was short range version, and this was only to serve the Asian sort of market, really. So the likes of
I do apologise.
Japan Airlines were sort of heavy users of the 100, and All Nippon as well were also heavy users of this. Now the strengthening of the airframe and the landing gear was just purely because of the amounts of takeoff and landing sort of thing. So basically, they wanted to use it as like a short-haul aircraft, but for a higher capacity.
Right.
So, it's a bit like nowadays where they tend to use it, like the airlines like Japan Airlines and, All Nippon, will use the Dreamliner or the A350 and do that sort of high density short route sort of thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
so
yeah.
So that tradition has been going back for years and years. But yeah, the short range version proved quite popular. 29 were built overall, but like I said, only the likes of Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways in Japan used the airframe.
It does make sense at the time. It was the only, it were biggest passenger aircraft in the world, weren't it? So it does make sense. Yeah.
So as you'll see as this episode goes on, we'll see a lot of the sort of variants that we didn't really sort of know or sort of fathomed existed, really. In terms of the 747, we always just associate it with your typical 100, 200, 300, 400 sort of thing. But there's a lot more to it, and we'll get on to that sort of later on in the show. But if you've got any opinions, got any thoughts, or just want to share any memories about the 747 that you may have experienced, whether you've been on one, or you've taken a really good photo of one, or you just remember something about it, or you've even been to see the Landor 747 and been to the open days and things like that, share them in the chat, and we'll read them out for the duration that we're on, basically. But yes, so the 100 was sort of the kickstart. Iran Air, like we said, were the last airline to retire them from commercial operation back in 2014. So what we're looking at there, so it's about a good sort of 30-40 years, I would say, for service in terms of 747-100 for Iran Air. So yeah, good, well done to them for maintaining the aircraft as well as they did. And it's just this whole thing has been like a learning curve sort of thing. So we're learning a lot about the 747 that we didn't actually know.
I think that when they were built, they were built proper as well, weren't they? They were absolutely. I mean, that's why they have lasted so long. I think some of the earlier ones. Even like say the ones what Virgin were flying and 15, 20 years old and 25 years old and things like that, and they just, they're absolutely solid, aren't they? They're proper good workhorses.
They are indeed. Yeah, I know I'm fairly certain there's one or two knocking about in Iran still, not in commercial use. But I'm fairly certain there are still one or two knocking around in Iran still. So I think it might be with the Air Force, maybe. Might be wrong.
Right.
But I'm fairly certain that that's the case.
So
yes. So let's move on.
They've still got the JT9D engines.
Yeah, they've still got the original engines on them.
Original Pratt & Whitney engines.
Yeah, still got the original engines on them, and I remember those as well because they were proper noisy sort of engines, and they were equipped on the 200, and then they stopped having them sort of from the 300 onwards. So yeah, proper noisy engines they are, and the noisy you don't really get to hear much nowadays. So if at all. But we'll move on to the next variation. Also, what I will say is no freighter version of the 100 series was ever built. So any sort of 100 freighters that you know of or have seen or have sort of come across have all been sort of converted. So then none were built as a pure freighter. But yeah, so we'll move on to the 200. Now the 200's got a few more different sort of options to it, which we'll get into. So this entered service in 1971. 393 of these were built for a lot of airlines. We'll go through at the end sort of who operated what as well. Otherwise, we'll be here most of the evening going through each topic. So we'll get sort of the main bulk done, and then we'll talk about airline operators and things like that, really, and go from there. But yeah, 393 747-200s were built, and this was the first version of the 747 to be built solely as a freighter. But you also got the like I said, the B version, just like the 100. You've got the C, which is a conversion.
Excuse
and the
me.
M, which is a combi, which we'll discuss now. So, if we jump on to... Yeah, so they were offered with sort of the same engines, so Pratt & Whitney JT9D engines, for the sort of first 3 years of production. That was all you could have on them until you could have the Rolls-Royce, I think it's RB211 engines as well, just as a different alternative, really, which a lot of airlines then chose to go on to, because I think they were a little bit more fuel efficient. But so they were produced in passenger, freighter, convertible, and combi series. And the 200 passenger version also had an increased fuel capacity, and it had more powerful engines. And it had a range starting over 5,000 miles to nautical miles to 6,000 nautical miles with the more sort of powerful Rolls-Royce engines. Most 200s had an internally stretched upper deck, allowing it to seat up to 16 passengers. So they sort of stretched the deck out on this one. The 100 had, I think it was 6 windows initially, and then they sort of took that and thought we can make something out of this and put it to 16 seats. And I would like to sort of I'd hope that somebody has been on a 747 and sat in the upper deck, because I'd like to kind of know what their experience is.
But it was a nice experience.
I would imagine so, because I think you were treated like royalty if you were sat in
I think so.
In the in the top deck. So so yes. The freighter model, the 200F, had a hinged nose cargo door and could be fitted.
Yeah, I was going to mention the design for the 747. It originally were going to be a freighter, weren't it? And that was the reason for putting the pilot's cockpit where it was, right at the top of the plane, weren't it?
That's right.
So they could lift the nose at the front, and then the lump at the back of it were going to be like sleeping quarters and what have you, weren't it? I think that was the original intention, weren't it?
Yeah. So the initial intention behind it was to be a freighter.
Yeah.
And as we see in different sort of variations, like later on towards the end of the show, you'll see it's also sort of used or was going to be used for sort of other purposes. So that we'll get onto that sort of shortly. But yeah, that's pretty much it really. So you put the cockpit right up the top there, so you can then swing the nose open to make it easier to load up. And I may be wrong, or I might be sort of right, but I'm sure it's the first aircraft to have that sort of swinging nose open sort of thing. Unless there was there might be an early plane, early like prop or something that maybe had that, but yeah, it was one of the first anyway to have the swing nose sort of thing. But yeah, the 747-200 had a capacity of 105 tons. And a maximum takeoff weight of up to 833,000 pounds, which equates to 378,000 kilos. The freighter version first entered service in 1972 with German airline Lufthansa, and of course they operated them all the way through up until maybe like early 2000s, I think. And then obviously opted to do I think they opted for MD-11s and then sort of went on to the 777s. It's amazing to me how they haven't converted any of their 747s to sort of freighters, really, if they've been using the 200 freighter for that amount of time. And then, yeah.
I mean, Lufthansa, they got a massive fleet anyway, haven't they? And like you say, they use the MD-11s, don't they, and 777s and things like that, don't they? And I'm just trying to think of I watch a bit of Just what's it called? Is it called Just Planes or something?
Just Planes.
They do the cockpit flights, and I'm just trying to think if they do one in a 747 in a freighter. I'm sure they do, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, to be quite honest. But I mean, they don't use them anymore, do they? I think there's only as of July 2019, 5 747-200s remain in service as freighters. It doesn't say who that carrier is.
There's a cargo one, isn't there? There is a cargo one going around for a Georgian cargo airline that seems to be doing the rounds in Europe at the moment. The ex-British Airways one that is sort of doing the rounds at the minute. But there are a few. I have seen a few, and I think they do operate in Georgia, and that's the European country, Georgia. Not the American state. But there's still a couple knocking about, but they are very, very rare to see.
Definitely.
But apart from that, your only other 747-200 that you might be able to see sort of, or get more of a chance to see, is of course the most famous one of all, Air Force One. Yeah,
very, very true. It's funny. I watched a documentary on Air Force One. There's actually two of them, isn't there? Two Air Force Ones, isn't there?
There's two Air Force Ones and one's a decoy.
Is that what it is? Is the other one a decoy? I know they've got slightly different tail numbers, haven't they?
Yeah. So whichever one the president gets on, I think is
that's Air Force One, isn't it?
The other one uses a decoy in case anybody's like planned something, so they'll see that and go, oh, he's on there. Then if that one sort of God forbid, like gets hit by something or gets attacked or something, or they attempt to hijack it, sort of thing. Then the president's not on it, so they always have a decoy.
What about the Doomsday planes? Is that what they call them? Are they 747-200 or are they 400?
Yeah, no, they are as well. They are 747-200. So, like I say, apart from, unless they count as the few that are still around and still flying, they do sort of count. But Doomsday one is a 200.
Yeah. So there are a few still knocking about there, aren't there? But even they're being retired. Before 25, I think 2025. I think they've ordered a few 747-800s, haven't they?
I believe so.
To make the new Air Force One.
Yeah, I believe so. But before we go on, we'll go into the comments, and Ian, I'll let you go from Leo 911.
Right. Evening, fans. No, Jared. No, I'm sorry, Leo. Jared's he's not turned up tonight, so I'm taking over for tonight. Bob Brown plane spotting 747-200, known for going long on on takeoff.
That's right. Yeah, they are notoriously long takeoff runners. Is the best way of putting it.
Right. Would you say that's just down to? I suppose it's just the engine power and things like that, isn't it?
Engine power and probably like the weight of takeoff as well, I think.
Yeah,
if you fully load
suppose,
one, that you can go onto YouTube and you can find all sorts of videos, and you'll see like 747-200s using up most of the runway before they even get off the ground. I remember there's that one particular video. I want to say it's at Bournemouth, and I actually watched it today as well, so I should know this. But it sort of ate up about maybe 9/10 of the runway before it lifted off. So, yeah, they're notoriously known for their long takeoff runs.
Yeah, for the long takeoffs. Yeah. I'm sure Steve Plains will know about that, won't he? He's your Bournemouth man, isn't he?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Samuel Taylor Ackroyd. Sorry, I left for a bit. Well, he should know better. And he says hi, Rob, to Rob Brown at Rob Brown plane spotting again. Air Force One, most famous 200. Yeah, it is for sure, right. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's still when I watched the documentary the other day, and it sort of did a bit of a walk around sort of thing, and it's absolutely pristine. Everything about it, right up to wheels and things like that. Everything's just absolutely pristine, and it really is.
You won't find a speck of dust on it at all. They polish the absolute, they polish the life out of it basically, so it looks brand new for the age that it is.
Let's have a look what else we've got. Yeah, it's a fantastic looking plane. It really is. Samuel Taylor Ackroyd. Fun fact about the 747s: BA had the largest fleet of 747-400s before they retired them.
30 odd, I think, in the fleet, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
But it's about 30. I want to say about 36, or I may have had 36 at one time. But Yes, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, they even when airlines were still, or they were retiring them, sort of thing. BA still kept them and were sort of the biggest operator.
Yeah, it's massive shame, isn't it? But as much as we're all going to miss like the passenger variant of it, you can still see it's quite a good market really for freighters, isn't there? They're not disappearing just yet, are they?
No, we've still got plenty of years, plenty of years left of seeing the 747, even if it is a freighter version sort of thing. But yeah, they'll be around for a few more years.
Oh yeah, definitely, and the 747-8, they're still being ordered, aren't they? So even though I think it's the freighter variant rather than the passenger variant, isn't it? What's on order at the moment, but they're still being made, so they're still around, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the production line I think closes next year, so whatever's been ordered is what's going to be sort of fulfilled, and then that'll be it. Yeah,
that'll be it then, won't it? Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Air Force One windows are bulletproof, apparently. I imagine they would be.
Yeah, extra security to be done on that one.
Yeah. And have you seen the film Air Force One starring Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman? I think it's been on telly about 100 times in the last week or two, hasn't it?
If you have, Air
Force One. It's been on TV a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, I have seen it. Yeah, it's pretty good actually.
Yeah. Air Force One to be replaced by 747-8s, which were originally ordered by a Russian airline, Transaero, before they went bust and diverted to US Air Force for Air Force One replacements.
Yeah, did hear something about the because I heard rumours that it was either like a Lufthansa one that had been kept behind, or it was like ones that were ordered for a bankrupt airline, and Transaero, that sort of makes a bit more sense now. I can't remember.
I've heard that. I've heard that story before actually with Transaero. So that's definitely right. That Steve Plains, he's only ever seen the 747-400 takeoff from Bournemouth, and it was incredibly light, so it wasn't a true benchmark of runway usage because it's got a decent runway, hasn't it, Bournemouth?
I'm going to find this video and I'm going to probably post it somewhere, like on the social media thing. I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
But yes. Also, one more in now. I'll just quickly read that one. That's Samuel Taylor Ackroyd. Says, so next year will be a step closer to being a type that no longer flies. With the 747-8s and that, they'll be around for another 15 odd years, I would say, something like that.
Yeah, I mean the operators they run them into ground, don't they?
Yeah, they'll got companies like UPS and like Polar Air Cargo and airlines like that. They'll use them for a good amount of time. So not to get worried too early. We've got plenty of usage still to come.
They're not going to disappear just yet, are they?
No, definitely not. But keep getting your comments.
I mean, fair play to the plane as well. I mean, we all know about the cost of fuels going up and things like that, and aviation and aircraft designs moving on to like your carbon fibres and things like that, and planes getting lighter and more fuel efficient and what have you. And I don't think the market's going to be there anymore for Boeing 747, is it? Because they're just not practical, are they? It's more of a nostalgic thing for everyone, isn't it? Everyone wants to see them and things like that. Yeah. But what was it? 1968 or 1969 when the first one flew. It's had a good innings, hasn't it? To be fair,
been going for a long, long time.
Yeah, and it will. I think because of what it was, and it was the first like jumbo jet. Everyone loves it, don't they? I don't think there's a bad word to be said about it, is there?
No, unless you've been on it and had a bad experience, then I don't think you can really. I mean, they're always great to see. They're always turn heads, and they're not ones where if you go out plane spotting and stuff, you'll sort of look at it and go, "Oh, I'm not going to bother with that one," because I think you always got to catch it because it's iconic, isn't it? So
absolutely, yeah, definitely. Yes. I've always wondered what the first row, the first row seats, it's so close. Well, the first window on the actual fuselage is so close to the nose cone, isn't it? And I've often wondered, is that the short straw when you get given that seat? the one sat right behind the nose cone, because you're just going to have like, if you sat halfway down or at the back, you've got something to look at in front of you. But if you've got the front row seats, you've just got a wall in front of you, haven't you?
Well, there's that, and then there's also, I remember a topic of conversation being brought up a good few weeks ago, I think, actually, about this, with the sort of that first window that's right up by the nose. Because of the curvature, it's almost like you're looking in front of you, so you get a bit more of a better view, so people actually prefer it.
Right, yeah, I never thought of it that way, yeah.
Window, because it starts to curve round the nose, so does the window.
Yeah, you'll get a forward view, won't you?
You almost get like a forward view of where you're going, sort of thing.
Oh, that's pretty cool then, isn't it? So, yeah, it's got its advantages then, hasn't it?
Yeah. So, it's pretty cool. Because you go on a plane and stuff, you've got like a side view and you've got to turn your head and stuff, but it's like a unique experience, because not many, it's not, well, apart from the 747 really, there's not really another airplane that's got seats right up to the nose cone sort of thing, so you've got that, like I said, that curvature that then allows you for a bit of like a forward view sort of thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool actually, isn't it? Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I don't think there is another aircraft like that, is there? Because pilot's always sat in way, isn't he?
Yeah, that's it. And no other plane has got that, apart from the A380, of course. But no other plane has got the cockpit sort of as high as the 747. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, fantastic.
Yes. Well, let's finish off on the 200. So we've also got the convertible version, which could be converted between passenger and a freighter or used in mixed configurations, and featured removable seats and a nose cargo door. The 200 convertible series could also be outfitted with an optional side cargo door on the main deck. So there's quite a few planes that are like this. There's a 737 that's a bit like it as well. If you've got a bit of cargo but not a lot of passengers, you just take some seats out and you can just fill that up, sort of thing. It's almost like filling up the boot with your car, sort of thing. And pushing the seats down, sort of thing.
I think, where have I seen something like that? I think on these, like Alaskan, the people who fly out to these Alaskan like diamond mines and things like that.
That's right.
I think they fly out on stuff like, not on 747s, a lot smaller. I couldn't tell you what plane it is, but they have that kind of thing, don't they? Where the front of the plane is filled with cargo and God knows what else, and then you've got like 50 or 60 passengers sat in it as well who are flying out with it all, and they've converted the front of it into cargo. Yeah, I've seen that on different planes. Yeah.
So the convertible series, if I'm correct, wasn't very popular. There was only 13 in total were actually sort of built, and these flew for different airlines. Like I said, we'll go through them sort of later on and stuff. But it's an interesting concept, because the idea of almost like I say like pushing your back seats down just to get more boot room sort of thing. That's kind of the same sort of vibe that it sort of gives off, really.
Yeah. I suppose it was done like that. I mean, air travel back. I mean, if you're going back to early 70s, I would imagine early to mid 70s, you're not going to get the massive volumes of people, especially holiday makers and stuff like that, because I suppose transatlantic crossings and stuff like that were relatively new to normal, to the masses when the Boeing 747 came out, because before that, there wasn't a real... People weren't really going to like places like Florida and God knows where for the holidays and what have you. So if a company like Lufthansa, for instance, is flying to the States and they've only got, I don't know, 150 passengers or whatever, then they might as well fill, rest of plane up with something different. So I think the convertible was probably a good idea at the time.
Yeah. Seeing as we're talking about the combis, where you got the sort of the no, not combi, the convertible. Sorry, the nose cargo door sort of thing, and it could be fitted with one on the main deck sort of thing. So sort of towards the front of the plane. The combi aircraft, which is designated as 747-200M. Just you could carry freight in the rear of the plane, so it was almost just like a switch. Did you want to carry it in the front or did you want to carry it in the back? But a removable partition of the main deck separated the cargo area at the rear from the passengers at the front. The 200M or combi, we'll go with combi, could carry up to 238 passengers in a 3-class configuration with cargo carried on the main deck, so not underneath like you would do, sort of thing. This is also, like it's half cargo, half passenger sort of thing, but in the rear as opposed to the front. But yeah, only 10 of these combis were ever built, and they were operated by KLM. So KLM were the only ones to operate the combi version. So airlines had conversions into combis, but KLM operated the outright combi versions of the 747-200. So airlines such as the old French airline UTA had 2 converted combi aircraft as well. But yeah, KLM, like I said, were the only ones to operate it.
Having a combi, whether your freight's at the front or whether your freight's at the rear, and you've got like 238 passengers on sat somewhere in your plane, I think that could pose a lot of weight issues and centre of balance issues and flight problems and God knows what else if it's not done correctly. So I would imagine, trying to balance the weight of a plane out so it flies efficiently and things like that, and with the weight of the passengers at the front, and then the weight of cargo at the back, I don't think you wouldn't have been able to get that much cargo in it, would you? Otherwise, it would have been pulling wheelies down runway, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so hence the more powerful engine sort of thing, really, because obviously you need them. You don't want an underpowered aircraft if you're carrying freight as well as passengers, sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So after launching the initial 200 passenger version with Pratt & Whitney JT9D engines, Boeing announced that it had reached an agreement with General Electric to give the 747 the CF6 series engines to increase the aircraft's market potential. And the only reason that the 200 was ever powered by Rolls-Royce engines was because British Airways demanded them, basically. So British Airways ordered 4 aircraft initially with the Rolls-Royce engines, and the RB211 524B engines. In 1976, if you wanted a brand new 747-200, it would have cost you a whopping $39 million, which in today's money is $177.4 million. So, yeah, massively expensive. But it proved popular because there was more ordered than the 100 version, and it came with different options. So, it was quite a popular aircraft.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, the price of one of them, like you say, they're 25, flying for 25 years, they're going to get the money back, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So, of the 393 747-200 versions that had been built by the time that production ended in 1991, 225 were passenger versions, 73 were freighters, 13 were the convertible ones, and so 78 were. That can't be right then. If total of 10 combi were operated by this, must have been more than, not just the 10 for. Am I looking at that right? Yeah, it says 78 were the 200 combis. So there must have been more out there. I think Air France had a few of them, but like I said, we'll get onto that shortly. But KLM basically operated 10 of them. Yeah. That's just one we'll throw out there. But yeah, 78 747-200s were combis. And then, of course, 4 were military, including the 2 Air Force Ones and Doomsday. And I think it's 2 Doomsday ones in there or something.
Yeah, there is two. Yeah,
Night
I think there's more
Watch
than
as well.
two, to be honest. I think there might be a few of them, isn't there?
Yeah, Night Watch is there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, Night Watch. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
And of course, just like the 100, Iran Air were the last to retire the 747-200 in May 2016, 36 years after it was delivered. So yeah, talk about getting your money's worth. 36
Absolutely,
years.
yeah.
And of course, they were popular at Heathrow as well. You know, regular visitors before they were banned because of I think it was noise or something. Well, they were just not allowed into European air. Well, probably into just the UK airspace, or maybe even European airspace, because then it swapped over to the A300s. Hence why they then were retired. So, yeah, shame really, because I loved them. I loved hearing them go over the house and stuff like that when I lived sort of nearby. So,
yeah, they were proper iconic looking things, weren't they? I mean, just the engines alone, weren't they? They just look iconic, don't they? You know, compared to the RB211s and things like that, they were just, I don't know. There's something about that type of engine I find on a 747 which makes it look. It shows its age. You know what I mean? It makes it look a little bit retro and things like that. And it's just, I don't know. They're just quite a nice looking engine, I find, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and of course, last little note before we move on to the next one. There was no short range version for the Asian market. So I think the Asian sort of market took the full. I know airlines at Japan Airlines and All Nippon, they ordered the 200 version, but I think it was the let's say the full kit sort of thing as opposed to the short range version, and sort of tried to make the most out of that really.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm not 100% on this, but towards the end of the 200's reign, I would imagine, are you sort of going into 777 territory and things like that then? So there's alternatives now, isn't there? Rather than just your jumbo jet, there's now alternatives beginning to appear at market, isn't there?
That's right.
Rather than using a short range 747, there's alternatives to that now, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Let's move on then to sort of the rarer and I don't want to say least popular, because I don't think that's the right way of doing it, because you'll see anyway, but we'll jump onto it. So next up we've got the Boeing 747 SP, or Special Performance aircraft. So the I used to call it the Chubster, because it was just, it looked, it's small and chubby, and yeah, that's just me. But yeah, the 747 SP is a unique version of the 747. Only 45 were built, and it's had an interesting career, which we'll get onto shortly. Now, the development of the 747 SP was a joint sort of request from American airline Pan Am and Iran Air, who were looking for a high capacity airliner with enough range to cover Pan Am's New York to Middle East routes, and Iran Air's planned Tehran to New York as well. So sort of looking to cover the same sort of base, really. And a little fun fact is, when the Tehran to New York route was launched, it was at the time the longest non-stop commercial flight in the world. Now, the best way to describe the 747 SP is, you take a standard 747, imagine it in 5 sections, and you take out section 2 and section 4, one just in front of the wing and one just behind the wing. And then you piece the rest together. That is literally what they've done. So they've taken a fuselage section out the rear and a fuselage section out the back of the front, and that is how you've got your 747 SP. So quite an interesting way of doing it, really. It's just removing parts of the fuselage.
Yeah, I suppose that's how planes are built, though, aren't they? They are like modular, aren't they? And they just, I think it's same with today's aircraft. If they want an A350 1000 or something, all they do is stick another section on it, don't they? And it's like Lego, isn't it?
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. You just take bits off it, and voila, you now have your plane.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But the 747 SP is 48 feet shorter than the 747-100. And as we mentioned, the fuselage sections from the sort of just in front and after the wing were taken, and obviously made this aircraft shorter. And the center section of the fuselage was redesigned to fit mating fuselage sections. So they had to alter that as well, because you couldn't just take out the the front section and the back section and then try and piece it together.
No, they wouldn't have stuck. Yeah, they wouldn't have fit, would they?
No, so it all had to be redesigned and things like that. But yeah.
I mean, was the wingspan the same?
I believe so. I believe the wingspan was exactly the same.
Right.
It was just, like I said, it was literally like taking a 747 and literally just cutting bits off it. So everything
they just wanted the extra range, didn't they?
Yeah, so everything was the same. So what it had, the only difference is, it had a double hinged rudder and a longer vertical and horizontal stabilizer. So the tail is larger, and the horizontal stabilizers at the back were also slightly longer as well to help with stabilization and things like that. And just just like the 100 and 200, power was provided by the Pratt & Whitney JT9D engines and the Rolls-Royce RB211 524 engines. It received its airworthy certificate in February 1976, and then entered service with Pan Am and Iran Air that same year. The aircraft was chosen by airlines wishing to serve major airports with short runways. A total of 45 were built, like we said, with the second to last one being delivered in 1982. Now here comes the interesting bit. So they closed down the production after the second to last one was delivered. And then a whole 5 years later, Boeing reopened the production line to build one last 747 SP for an order by the United Arab Emirates government. So they wanted one, and they said, yeah, no problem, we'll build you one. And they opened the line up purely for that one. Which I don't think has ever been done since. I think once they've closed it down completely, that's it. Like, you don't really get a chance to... It's like going back and asking for brand new 757s.
Just asking for one.
Yeah. You
wouldn't open a production line just for one plane, would you? I mean, there's obviously a lot more to it, isn't there? Like, build me this 747 SP and you'll get an order for like $30 billion or something for the rest of your aircraft sort of thing. Like, but we want this one. That's so there's obviously a lot of money changing hands, weren't there? Definitely.
I would imagine there's a few pennies being sort of exchanged in in I can't think of the bloody word I was trying to think of then. Just money being exchanged.
Definitely.
for them to open up the line one more time just for that one.
Just for that one plane.
Yeah. Of course, as we know, the most famous one at the moment is Sophia, as it's called. One that's modified for the NASA and German Aerospace Center. For the, I think is it a telescope or something they've got on it?
Yeah, I think it's got a telescope, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The cargo door opens up, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah. The telescope and things like that. And of course, no prizes for guessing who the last operator of the type was, which was Iran Air. And they retired theirs, or the last one, in 2016 as well. When was it? May? Yeah, so literally a month after they retired the 747-200, they retired the 747 SP as well. Remember seeing these for the first time. I'm wondering what it was. I could sort of tell it was a 747, but it didn't look right to me. So I thought something could, they just sort of experimented with one. But the more you got to see them, like, the more you sort of appreciate them. And they're a bit like things if you're going back on like nostalgic reasons, is you take things for granted at the time, and then you sort of say to yourself, "Oh, I wish I could see another one," sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I like them. I think they're really, really smart. I particularly like the oversized tails on them and things like that. They they just look different, don't they? They look unusual.
It's very, very unique, and I think that sort of thing, with the long tail sort of thing, also went on to the Dreamlifter as well, because the Dreamlifter's got a large tail, which we'll get onto in a bit. Yeah, it's almost sort of the same sort of shape, really. So, yeah, it's a nice little plane. Shame more airlines didn't really order it. Lots of airlines obviously operated it second hand. Ones that come to mind being, no, not second hand. Sorry, lots of airlines operate them, like South African. They operated them. You see on the screen there if you're watching on YouTube. Pan Am being one of them, United Airlines being one as well. So it's just a shame they sort of didn't really grow as much as like the 747-200s and stuff.
Did a lot of them get converted into freighters, into cargo?
I don't believe
something
so.
tells me, is it silkware? Silkware flying? Not
the SP, no. None of the SPs were converted to...
were they not? Right.
No. I know that some went as like government aircraft, like Qatar, and I'm just trying to think. Obviously, the UAE one as well. They were all sort of built for government purposes, but never for freighter. I don't think obviously you couldn't get much in there. I think that's probably what his reasoning was.
I suppose.
I don't think there was really a need for it. If you've got, the 747-200 at the time, to have something smaller to try and fly freight around in, it wasn't necessary. It's
not practical, is it? No, not at all.
No, not practical. But let's jump into the comments before we jump onto the 300 series. And we go back to Rob Brown Plane Spot, and it says 747 is just magic, never gets old. And I think that is probably the best way of describing it. Really, is it's iconic, and it's it's that sort of shape that you're never ever going to see again.
I'm just going to disappear for 30 seconds, Tom.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry. All right, sorry.
What else we got? We have got, what's your favourite airline that operates a 747? I enjoy seeing Cargo Lux, and I think Rob will agree. I used to like seeing the Virgin Atlantic ones. The Virgin ones were pretty cool. And also liked seeing Korean as well. Korean 747s were really, really cool to see. I have a few photos of them, but yeah, it's really, really cool to see the Korean ones. And I don't know, I mean, can you pick a favourite? I mean, I've got like classic ones in my head, but of like United, obviously British Airways as well. We could never tire of seeing them. Virgin, so many that come to mind really. So many that come to mind. Samuel Taylor Ackroyd says something about the 747-200. Is that it was the type that was involved in the world's worst aviation disaster, which was KLM 4805 colliding with Pan Am 1736 in Tenerife. Yes, that is that's right. Samuel Taylor Ackroyd again says South African Airways also operated the Combi, and one of them crashed flying a South African Airways flight 295 when a fire broke out. Interesting. I didn't actually know that. Samuel Taylor Ackroyd coming out with all the crash statistics today. The SP was the variant that was involved in the second. I don't think that's correct, actually. The SP was the variant that was involved in the second airworthiness being jail. No, it was. I'm going to have to correct you there. It wasn't. It was the SR version, I think, not the SP, because Japan Airlines never operated the SP. Yes. But I know what you're on about. That's the main thing. Rob Brown Plane Spotting says, got to see the Qatar government 747. I think it's in North America these days. Gold taps and all. I can imagine they spent quite a lot of money kitting out their 747 SPs. And Steve Plains says, it's a shame Pan Am 747 will always remind me of Lockerbie. Yeah, there is always that sort of tragedy as well, which, yeah, sadly will sort of stick with Pan Am for as long as memory will allow it. And then Samuel Taylor Ackroyd saying, what's the SR? The SR is what we discussed earlier with the 100 version. We're going to get onto that again with the 300 in a second. But the SR was known as the short range 747 for higher capacity in Asia. So Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways were the only operators of the 100 SR, and it was just basically just a 747 that was mainly used for short haul operations. So yeah, while we wait for Ian to come back, if you do have any more comments, get them into the chat. We'll read those out shortly before we jump onto the 300. And I want to know what your memories are. If any of you have been on one, get your experiences in the chat, and we will read them out throughout the duration of the show. We're already an hour in, and if you're enjoying the show so far, leave a like on the video. It will help me out massively, and it will also help the algorithm of the of YouTube out, so that will probably get seen by a lot more people. And if you are new around here and aren't subscribed to the channel, smash the subscribe button. That would be much appreciated. But yes, so I want to know in the chat as well what your favourite 747s are, and what's your favourite airline that operated them. I can't pick, so this is why I'm hoping that you guys have got your favourite ones. And like I said, any comments from now, we'll get them read out. For anybody that's joining us late and wondering where Joe is, Joe no-showed this evening. Not quite sure what happened. So yeah, we are running with myself and Ian. But yes, so I hope everybody's enjoying it so far.
I'm back, by the way.
You are back, right? Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, I've been back for a while. Yeah,
Cheers.
I was just waiting for an opportunity to speak. That's all.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a nature break.
There we go. Now he's back. But
Yeah.
yes. So let me know in the chat what your favourite 747s are, what your favourite airlines are, and have you been on one? Let's move on to the 300 series. The 300 series is known as the least popular of the 747 series in terms of if you take the SP out of it, this was the least popular one. Entered service in 1983 and 81 were built, so this was not popular by any means. Why could that be?
I'm just wondering, I was going to ask you the exact same thing. The upper deck were longer, weren't it? But that's not a bad thing, is it, surely?
No. It was stretched by, what was it, like 20 odd?
Yeah, 20 odd foot, yeah.
20 odd feet. And yeah, it's a strange one, really. Maybe it was just too much sort of 747 for the time. And, this was at the time where, 1983. You got the likes of the 767 was coming out. Airbus were on the scene with the A3, not the A340, A3 sort of A300s and stuff. So my guess is it was probably too much plane for its time.
Yeah, I think as well the era you go back to. You were saying about Sam with accidents and things like that. That there were a lot of hijackings and things like that as well going on, weren't there? So
yeah,
not wanting to sound morbid or whatever. If a plane's going to go down, you don't want 500 people, losing their lives when a smaller plane would only kill 300. You don't want to say it that sort of way, but from that sort of point of view as well, I suppose. The massive jumbo jets were a bit of a liability when you look at it from that point of view, So maybe that had a factor within it as well, because passengers didn't want to travel with 500 other people with possible terrorists on board and things like that, back in them days.
Yeah. So the basically a stretched upper deck was the difference between this and the 200, and it had two emergency exit doors. Which was visible, or the most visible difference between the 300 and the previous models. Now, I'm just going through my notes here that I've got.
Yeah, they actually introduced the straight stairway as well to the upper deck, rather than a spiral staircase, didn't they? So
that's right. Yeah. So
yeah, that would have stopped me from catching it. I wouldn't have got on it. I want to get on that spiral staircase.
Just to say you've done it.
Yep.
But yeah, so the 300 was actually the first model of the 747, which didn't. Oh, do you know it could? Okay, maybe I was wrong. So you could equip it with the same Pratt & Whitney engines, the Rolls-Royce engines as a 200, as well as updated General Electric CF6 ATC2B1 engines. So I didn't think you could get the Pratt & Whitney ones on this, but apparently you could. But I think they were not very popular. I can't think if... I'm just trying to rack my brain here. And unless the Asian airlines had them, I can't really think of an airline off the top of my head that had the Pratt & Whitney engines on the 300. But... the
JT9 ones?
JT9D ones, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're a bit dated by now, aren't they, these engines? And newer engines and more efficient, quieter engines have come onto the market by now, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that's probably why. I mean, the first one was delivered to Swiss Air. Swiss Air were sort of the launch customer. At the time, in 1982, it would have cost you $83 million for a new one, which is $222.6 million in today's money. And beside the passenger model, two other versions, which is the combi version, which is designated with the letter M, and 300 short range, which came back because there wasn't a 200 version, were produced. The combi, the 300 combi, again features cargo capacity at the rear of the plane, very similar to the 200. But with a stretch upper deck, it can carry more passengers. And the 300 SR, the short-range high-capacity domestic model, was produced for the Japanese market with a maximum seating of 584 passengers. So, sort of like the past era Ryanair sort of thing, cramming them in as much as you can.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the... So you reach a new golden age of transatlantic and long range travel, aren't you? With this 747-300, and like you said, they're just absolutely cramming them in, aren't they?
Yeah.
Even for they were using them for short hops, weren't they? Really, the Japanese.
Yeah, I mean you imagine cramming in nearly 600 people into a 747. Because of the high capacity and things like that, you would imagine that it'd be sort of properly crammed, and these planes would not be sort of half full or like 3/4 full. Like they would be full because air travel in that time was sort of booming.
Absolutely, yeah. There was. I was reading earlier today, and if somebody can probably put it in the chat, there was an evacuation. I don't know. I think it might have been the 80s or something, and I'm sure they got about 800 people into a 747 when they evacuated this. I couldn't tell you what place it was. It was just something I read through.
I know what you're on about. Yeah, I know what you're on about. I don't think it was. Yeah. I think it was probably the 400 or something, but I think it holds the record for something like 1,000 people.
Is that what it was? About 1,000 people? I think
they did an evacuation. They put. It must be. I don't know what model it was, so I'm not going to speculate on what type of plane it was. I know it's a 747, but they crammed 1,000 people into them to get them out.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's unfathomable. Like I can't even imagine trying to get 1,000 people into a 747. Nor do I want to imagine it, just because how would you get 1,000 people in there?
Well, they could have dressed them up as clowns, like they do in a Mini, and done it that way. Didn't like you cram 20 clowns into a Mini in a circus. Yeah, they could have done that, couldn't they?
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Ryanair were born.
Yep.
But no. Yeah, so the of the 81 747-300s that were delivered, 56 were for passenger use, 21 were combis, and 4 were the SR versions. Production didn't last very long on this one because of the lack of popularity with it. So, with the first one being delivered, the first one being flown in 1982, the first one being delivered in 1983, production stopped in 1990. So 7 years later, after the first delivery, it then went out of production because they had just announced the more advanced 747-400. And this was in 1985. So it almost feels like Boeing were sort of getting too carried away with themselves, going, oh, the 747's really doing well. We'll try and throw out an advanced version of the 200, and it just didn't sell. So then they had to kind of find a different way of doing it, and then they launched the 400, and then that sort of pretty much killed off the 300.
It's a real strange one, though, why the 300 wasn't a popular plane. I don't know. I just don't. I can't fathom it out. I really can't. Why? You know, what was that bad about it? After they've done the 100, which were fine, 200's fine, and then the 300 didn't really work for them, but the 400, you know, it made it, didn't it? You know, so it's just weird how the just one particular model didn't sell.
Yeah, it's an odd one, but don't forget this was around the time where Boeing were also bringing out the 767 as well, so maybe that's the start of the we don't need quad jets sort of thing. Airbus were planning to do starting to outline their A340 plans, sort of smaller planes that could do the same job, I guess. And like I said, I think they just got too carried away, and whilst like main carriers like Air France that operated it, and Qantas and Air India and Pakistan International Airlines also were some of the operators, just to name a few. Well, like I said, later on we'll get onto who ordered what. The last one was actually delivered to Sabina in 1990, for those that can remember that the Belgian airline Sabina. That was when the last one was given to them. And airlines like Qantas, they, like the ones we just mentioned, Qantas, Air France, etc., despite replacing their 300s with the 400s, they still continue to operate the 300. And Qantas, I think, were they weren't. Pakistan International Airlines were the last ones to retire the 300 version from commercial use. Back in
they still got 30 years out of it, didn't they?
Yeah, back in 2015. I remember seeing those man. They've given me a lot of memories over the years of being so incredibly low after taking off and rattling the house and everything. It's amazing. But according to sources, only 2 remain in commercial service. So Mahan Air in Iran recently brought back one of them, which was always good to see after years of being in storage. And a Belarusian cargo airline, Transavia Export Airlines, operates one of them as well. So a lot rarer, actually, than the 200 series.
It's really strange, that, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's very strange. No freighter version of the 300 was built or produced, but Boeing began modifications of used passenger 300 models into freighters in the year 2000. So that's how the whole conversion side of it sort of got going, really. But yeah, that pretty much sums up the 300. There's not really a lot to talk about on it, apart from the fact that
no, not at all. No, I think it was just the wrong plane at the wrong time, weren't it?
I think so. Like I said, more things were coming out, and I think a lot of airlines must have looked at it and gone, well, it's kind of the same as what we've got now, maybe a little bit more advanced sort of thing, and stretched deck, and you can put more people in, but that's pretty much it, sort of thing. And maybe some airlines were just put off by that. So.
I mean, it's a massive. I mean, what, $200 odd million or whatever they cost. It's a big outlay, isn't it, for something what you've already got?
Yeah.
Just to squeeze an extra 2 or 3 people in it or whatever. you know, it's like you say, it probably just wasn't worth it, were it?
No. I'll just answer. I'll ask you a quick question. Out of those 3 airlines that you've got on the screen there, for those that are listening on Spotify and listening to this back, there's a picture on the screen of Swiss Air, Japan Airlines, and Air India 747-300. Which one of those is sort of your favourite out of those 3?
If I were answering it, it'd be the Japan one.
I'd go Swiss Air. I like the Swiss Air colours on it. Not many of them got to see it because they were retired very quickly, but I quite like that. That's sort of the last Swiss Air livery before they went bust. I quite like that on the 747.
Yeah, it is. I think they're all smart.
Very, very smart.
The Indian one's nice as well. It looks well retro. That's very retro.
Very nice. I missed that livery. It's such a nice livery.
The Japan one, for some reason, just reminds me of Qatar, and I don't know why. I don't know, but
each to their own, I guess.
Yeah, they're nice.
Wicked. Yeah, so that pretty much sums up the 300. Now, before we get on to the 400, Ian, I'll let you dive into the comments with Samuel Taylor Ackroyd.
Lord, get me out. I don't want myself a quick blimp at this. I've put my bloody bins down. I don't know what I've done with him. Right, never mind. Samuel Taylor Ackroyd, he thinks he's flown on at least one 747 on his Florida trip back in 2016, 2017.
Very cool.
I think Virgin were doing Florida, weren't they? I suppose a few others were as well, weren't they?
Yeah.
I don't think BA did they fly to Florida?
Miami and stuff.
Right. So it could have been on BA as well, couldn't it? Could have been with anyone, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's heading off now anyway, so have a good evening. Goodbye, Stamp, thumbs up from him as well. Steve Plains, BA Landor and the Virgin 747 that recently retired are his favourites. My favourite memory was seeing the final BA 747 leaving Bournemouth. He's seen the cargo Logic arrive into Heathrow recently, but it's not the same. I suppose it would be, would it?
It won't be the same without seeing those 747s coming quite regularly. It's a different world at the moment.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? It's one of them, and like you say, you get used to seeing them, and you take things for granted, and as soon as it's took away from you, you miss them, don't you?
That's it. Yeah.
And he's found the 747 takeoff on YouTube from Bournemouth.
Oh yeah, the one I was on about earlier.
Yeah, and he used a hell of a lot of runway.
Certainly did. If you haven't seen it, I applaud you to go and see it afterwards. It is a hell of a video. But yeah, fantastic. Do keep getting your comments in. We're going to be here for probably hopefully about another 40 minutes. So we'll try and get to the 2-hour mark and then sort of call it quits. But yes, we'll jump on now to the most popular one of them all, which was of course the 747-400. And as you can tell, it was that popular. There were so many different variants of it. 694 were built in total. And the first one entered service in 1989 with... do I say... No, I won't. Ian, who did it enter service with in 1989, the first one?
First 747-400 entered service, I would say... Cathay Pacific.
No, not even close.
All right, fair enough. BA.
No, it was actually Northwest Airlines.
Oh, okay, right.
Yes, they took delivery of the very first one, and yeah, like I said, since that very first one, 694 have been built, and it has an improved range, wingtip extensions, 6 feet. And winglets are 6 feet as well, so it had a longer wing, and also had the winglets as well, which improved the fuel efficiency by 4% compared to the previous 747 variants. And it was the 747-400 introduced a new glass cockpit designed for a flight crew of 2 instead of 3, so they reduced that down by quite a bit. and had a reduction of dials, gauges, and knobs from 971 in the various.
Oh, I was going to say there's a hell of a lot of gauges, and knobs, and God knows what inside one, isn't there?
Absolutely crazy. So the previous 747 versions had 971 dials, gauges, and knobs, and they cut that right down to 365 through the use of electronics. This was a whole new, different. This is more like I think the best way of like putting it is like the computer age sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
When it sort of really sort of started to kick off was with the 747-400. But yeah, so this was a time when, like I said, Airbus were just releasing their plans for the A330, A340, and yeah, this proved to be very popular just because of the reduction in fuel efficiency. The increase of fuel efficiency as well.
Yeah.
I
suppose the pilot training would have been reduced as well, wouldn't it? I mean, you've gone from 2 pilots and an engineer, I suppose, down to 2 pilots, and you've got 600 less buttons to learn. So
that's right.
The learning time would have been cut dramatically, I would imagine.
That's right. Yeah. So at a longer range, so it sort of also helped with airlines with those that were doing sort of fuel stops, sort of on their way to America. So places like Anchorage in Alaska were very popular for aircraft to pop into just for a quick fuel stop. This sort of bypassed that, and this was the first one where those Pratt & Whitney J29D engines were not available for it, but the Pratt & Whitney PW4062 engines were available. The General Electric CF6 ATC2s, very similar to the ones on the 300, and of course the rare type of engine, but ones that were on BA, and I think in terms of ordering, Cathay Pacific were the only ones, including BA, that ordered this, unless Qantas as well. Sorry, so 3 airlines that I can think of: Qantas, Cathay Pacific, British Airways, all ordered the 747-400 with the Rolls-Royce RB211 524 engines. And interestingly, because this reminds me of my childhood, really, when I used to see the 747s, the British Airways going over, and then you used to see the 767s. As a result of the 767 development overlapping with the 747-400 development, both aircraft can use the same 3 power plants and are even interchangeable between the 2 aircraft models. So I remember hearing a 767 going over from British Airways when I was like younger, and I sort of went outside because I thought it was a 747, and I looked up and thought, well, that's not a 747, and now you know why. So because of the development, they overlapped each other, and for example, if a 747 had an engine issue and you had a 767 that wasn't flying, you could just take that engine off and whack it on the 747, job done.
Happy days.
So it's quite a little nifty, quite a little handy. I think handy is the best way to put it, because you've got that option then. And it's quite nice actually to sort of be able to do that option where you can have, especially for like the likes of British Airways and that, where you got 747s and 767s on the same engine, so you don't have to kind of, I think at the same time you don't have as many technicians working on so many engines because they're all the same.
You've just rung a bell then. I think Kat Burton were talking about that when she was on, weren't she?
Yes.
They had to do that with her once over, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But it's cool. So like I said, just a childhood story. I used to call the 767 the 767 747. That's just because that's what it sounded like.
Because it sounded like it. Yeah.
None the wiser back then. So, and now I'm growing up a little bit more, and only just, and sort of understand it a little bit more now. So it's quite interesting. But
definitely.
So as we mentioned, the 747 came with many different options. So you had the regular passenger version, you had the freighter version, the combi version, the domestic version, which replaced the short range designation, the extended range passenger version, and then the extended range freighter version. So the passenger versions retain the same upper deck as the 300, while the freighter version does not have an extended upper deck. So an interesting one, when you're out next and you're doing your plane spotting and you see a 747 cargo plane come in, if it's got a stretched upper deck, it was a former passenger plane. If it doesn't have a stretched upper deck, it was built purely as a freighter.
That's it's a good way of spotting them, that, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah, since I found that out, I've been watching videos of like people that have done plane spotting and stuff, and I've all looked through it, and I'm like, that was a passenger one, that was a pure freighter sort of thing. And it's just a nice little game to play with yourself if you're sort of out plane spotting and you see all these like 747 freighters. It's just trying to determine which one was a passenger one when it was built, and try and find out which one was a thoroughbred in a freighter sort of thing. It's a nice little game to play.
It's quite interesting why they actually did that in the first place. I mean, why would they have the shorter upper deck on a? What were the point?
I think it's just a case of you're not putting passengers in there, so there's no need to stretch the upper deck to try and get more people in. So you try and you shrink it back down to like a 100 size, and you can get more cargo in there without worrying about hitting the sort of the top of the plane sort of thing. But
this is true.
It's just because it is, like I say, it's a converted plane, so it was a passenger. Then they converted it, but you can't take that. You can't take that hump out.
No, of course you can't. No, it's structural, isn't it? It's all the structure of the plane and stuff, isn't it?
So that would be why, basically. That's the whole sort of reason behind it. But yeah, it's a good little game. Next time you're out, like I said, and you do play it, let me know, and I want to know how you get on, sort of thing. I know I'm going to be doing that, so
yeah, I am as well. Actually, I'll be looking out for that as well next time, definitely.
Yeah. So quite a few different options, and like I said, it was very, very popular. We'll talk about the domestic version now, because whilst it was built for short range, like the ones previously, the 100 and 300 SRs, the 400D, as it was designated, had maximum seating for 624 people. So even that was increased to get as many people on there as you can. So the short range had 508. The short range of the 300 had 584, and this went up by an extra 40 seats, which in the likes of Japan and sort of the East Asia market sort of thing is a huge difference.
Yeah. I'm looking for. I mean, was there apart from? No, there wasn't. I'm looking for an extension to the actual length of the plane. Was there any difference in the length?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
No.
It was just a standard 747-400. I think it may have had. I want to say it was. I may have either read this somewhere, or I may just be making this up. I'm sure someone will confirm it. But because it's a short range one, I'm sure the fuel tanks weren't as big as they should be. Maybe there was a different size or something. I may have even read that, or I may have just made that up. I'm sure somebody will correct me though. But yeah. So basically, it had no winglets, so you could easily confuse it with the older version of the 747. So it had no winglets, but they could be retrofitted. So they were built without winglets, but you could put some on if you wanted to. And the likes of, again, Japan and Japan Airlines and All Nippon chose not to. So they stayed without the winglets, which again would be very confusing to spotters, because you think, oh, that's an old version of it, but it's not. It's actually a 400.
Yeah, but if they're only using them for short range, I mean, the idea of the extended wings and the winglets were for fuel efficiency, weren't it, and things like that, weren't it?
Mainly for your long haul flying.
Yeah, So I suppose the cost of the putting the winglets on probably didn't justify, the size of the trips they were actually doing, because they were using it for short range, weren't they? So probably didn't really justify having winglets, did it?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, the 400 passenger version first entered service in February 1989 with Northwest Airlines, and operated the Minneapolis to Phoenix route. So that's what they do what they do now, really. They keep it on short routes, and then once they sort of get an idea for it, it's all part of like crew training at the same time as well, because it's going to be a slightly different aircraft to what they're used to, and then push it out onto to long haul. Then you've got the combi version, which is the M, designated the M. That entered service a few months later in September with KLM. Of course, KLM being an operator of the 200 combi, and now operating the 400 combi. The freighter version entered service in November 1993 with Cargo Lux, yes. And then you had the what would be the flop of the lot, which is the extended range version of the 747. The freighter version entered service with Air France in October 2002, and the passenger version of the extended range only was ordered by one airline, which was the Australian airline Qantas. That was the only airline that ordered the 747-400 ER version to give it more range for its Australia to America routes. In January 2004...
How much difference?
Go on, say again.
Would it have made that much difference flying that kind of that kind of distance? It would have, a long range one or a shorter range one. It still would have had to stop for fuel somewhere, wouldn't it?
You could get to places direct, I think, as opposed to sort of having to stop in like Los Angeles and then going off to somewhere else. I think that's what it was. I don't know how much more range was on it, but there was extra range for it to. So basically, think of it as like how the 777 long range plane is. It's got more range. It's basically a 777-200 just with that extra bit of range on it.
Yeah.
In order for you to do a little bit longer sort of flying and that, but I'm just like sort of justifying the only reason Qantas was the only carrier to actually use them. Obviously, Australia's where Australia is, and it needs things like that, doesn't it? Yeah. So, 2004, Cathay Pacific and Boeing launched the 747-400 Special Freighter program, which was basically converting them into freighters, basically, which is again how you get the difference between the converted 747s, which have got the longer hump, than the outright freighters. So yeah, it's got quite a history with it, the first 747 Boeing converted freighter was redelivered in December 2005 to Cathay Pacific. Apart from that, March 2007, just going through my notes again, Boeing basically said it had no further plans to produce any more passenger versions of the 400, and the last one was delivered to China Airlines in April of 2005. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, 16 years ago was the last 747-400 delivery.
It's, they just live on forever, don't they? They're like B-52s, aren't they? They just keep going and keep going, don't they?
You would hope so. If you can get a 747 to go on for about 60 years,
yeah, that
would be some going. But
but there's just nothing to replace it, is there? Well, obviously the 747-800, but there is no other plane to replace the 747, is there? No, when it comes to carrying freight and things like that.
Yeah, it's the whole sort of it's the whole thing with quad jets no longer being desirable and everybody fancying the 787 or A350 now.
Yeah, it's a shame. It really is.
Yes,
I think it's just come to the end of its service, hasn't it? I think it's just, like you said, there's no market for quad jets anymore, is there? Within passenger service, definitely not.
Yeah, sadly not. But as we mentioned, 694 were built, and at various times, the largest 747-400 operator has included the likes of Singapore Airlines, Japan Airlines, and British Airways, with 36 as of July 2018, which, as we know, is sort of no longer the case. So, yeah, an interesting background, really.
I was just going to say, sorry, you pretty much all the passenger 747-400s have now retired. I've just noticed a comment from Steve Plains then saying, were they going to be due to be retired before what's happened, before the COVID thing and what have you? I mean, how long would you say BA would have, flown them? Well, how long would you think they would have got out of them? Another 5 years, perhaps?
Well, there was talk of the 747s slowly going towards the back end of 2023. I think it's 23.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have had much more time with them anyway. But obviously, I think the thing that's probably sucked the most about the retirements of the BA 747s is not only do they capture the hearts of the people, but it's like, if you've operated them for literally 50 odd years, and you don't get a chance to kind of send them off properly, I think that's the real kicker, is that, I mean, you look at how Qantas did theirs when they retired theirs. They sent them on a sightseeing tour over Sydney and that. And whilst British Airways did a flyby sort of thing, I don't think that's how they would have wanted to do it. I think they would have wanted to probably give a big ceremony.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
and I think that's why we all think we've been cheated, really, don't we? We've not seen the retirement, have we? We've just seen them. That's it. We're not flying them anymore, and that's pretty much it, isn't it? And that's the end of it.
Well, yeah.
We've not. It's sort of closure, isn't it? There's not been any closure.
No. So it's almost like I don't know. I guess best way of putting it is like a relationship ending, but never getting the answer why, or having something that you something you enjoy doing. Having that taken away from you, but you've not been told and you don't know why, sort of thing. It's kind of like that, and it is a shame, really, because I think if this sort of pandemic hadn't happened, you'd still see the likes of maybe Korean Air, Qantas, KLM, maybe obviously not so much All Nippon, and because they retired theirs long before this whole thing happened. British Airways would still fly theirs in big numbers. They retire them slowly. And airlines like that really would just sort of, like Thai Airways as well. I think Thai Airways would probably still be flying theirs as well. So, yeah, it did speed things up, and it did sort of rob us a little bit of a proper kind of, thanks for the memories kind of moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, yeah, it depends on how many now around the world get preserved and how many sort of go to the scrap heap. I know you obviously, like British Airways, you got the 3 retro ones that are being kept. I think there's another one in current livery that's being kept at Dunsfold along with the Landor one. But yeah, it's just a shame that not many of them are being preserved as like a, people loved them sort of thing. People love the Queen of the Skies, so we'll make sure that the people know about it.
Absolutely, yeah. It needs to be there forever, doesn't it?
That's it. Yeah,
it's proper history. Proper aviation history.
Yeah, just quickly jump into the comments there. Rob Brown Planespotting says, I think the Northwest 747 was a Boeing test bed. It suffered a tail-over incident on a flight out of Honolulu, and they think rigorous testing may have... Yes, I've seen Air Crash Investigation did a program on that, where the controls went all a bit wonky sort of thing, and they put it down to the fact that it had been rigorously tested. during its time as a test frame sort of thing. Yeah, that does ring a bell actually. Marco Barrett says the 400D was a strange one. Not many of them built. No, there was not at all, because it was mainly for the, I'd say for the Asian market, mainly Japan, just purely because of the high density routes to places like, I'm just going to go off my head, like Osaka, Tokyo, Fukuoka, I think it is. Fukuoka, I think is a place there. I haven't made that up. That is a place. That is a place. Places like that, really just high density kind of places and that. Marco Barrett again. Qantas flew the 747-400 direct from Australia to places such as Los Angeles and San Francisco, which they did. And I think the extra range version allowed them to go on to places like Denver and Chicago and little other places like that, really, without having to stop as well. So
it makes sense. I mean, it's not. I mean, on grand scheme of things, it's come from Australia, going from Chicago to Denver or whatever. It's not a massive distance, but there's enough range on that plane to get it there, isn't there?
That's
it does make sense that actually, yeah.
Marco Barrett then, because obviously we mentioned the Steve Plains comment. Marco Barrett again says, not sure if it's been mentioned, but Boeing had plans to produce a 747 variant with 3 engines instead of 4. It would have been in the same configuration as the TriStar, which is very correct. That is true. We're going to get onto sort of the obscure versions shortly. But that is correct. They were going to produce a TriStar version of the 747. I've seen pictures of it. It doesn't look great, so I'm glad they didn't. But yeah, not great, but very true, very true. But we'll go on to that. We'll go on to that shortly. But yeah, the 747-400, Queen of the Skies. Make the most of them while you can, even if they are freighters. They will be around for a long, long time, no doubt. I reckon airlines like UPS will probably take second-hand ones, as well, like they are with the MD-11s. They're taking them from Lufthansa Cargo and giving them a sort of a new lease of life. So. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be around for a long, long time.
I think you're definitely right there. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Right, moving on to the more modern of the lot. The 747-8 entered service in 2012 with. I should remember that. Why have I not written that on my notes? I want to say it's Lufthansa. Lufthansa got the first. There you go. Yeah, Lufthansa. So Lufthansa got the first one. I don't know why that wasn't in my notes. Lufthansa got the first one in, the first passenger one in 2012. Again, not a popular plane, because only 153 have been ordered. Is that just a sign of the times?
I think it is, isn't it? It's your quad jets, isn't it? Again, there's no market for it anymore, is there? The 350 and the 787 can do the same job, can't they?
Yeah.
Off the price, I suppose.
Well, the
cost-wise flying.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of shows you the sign of the times, because the passenger version isn't doing great in terms of sales, but the cargo version is doing wonders for the likes of, UPS and Cargo Lux. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's definitely doing wonders for them. Different engine, and of course the initial program was announced on in November 2005. And just fun fact, the 747-8 uses the same engine and cockpit technology as the 787, hence the -8 designation at the end. They didn't go for the -5 or -6 or -7, -8, because it's the same technology as the same engine as the 787, which is pretty cool. If you're into your engine sounds, you can kind of guess that. If you're a nerd like I am, but yes, I mean, it took me a while to warm up to this this plane. I thought it looked a bit long, and I thought it was a bit sort of iffy to begin with. But dare I say, apart from the 747-400, it's the prettier version of them all.
I totally agree with you. I've loved that plane ever since it came out. I don't know. I just think it looks a lot sleeker and a lot. I don't know. It just looks. I don't know whether it's just the way they're painted or whatever. But I just think they've got something about them. But I do like. You tend to see freighters, don't you? If you ever see a picture of a 747-8, it's always a cargo plane, isn't it?
That's right.
And I just think. I do like a cargo plane. I'll admit it. I like just a plain side on one with no windows in and things like that. And I think, I don't know, they've just got a nice look about them. They really do.
Yeah, so something about the about the stretch and the raked wingtip and stuff. Just, I think it just adds something very, very different to the 747. I mean, there were plans, like I said, we'll get onto in a second, but there were plans to do a 747, a bit like the Dash 8, but slightly shorter and with a raked wingtip and different engines and stuff, but that never materialised. But that kind of plan and technology went into the Dash 8, so it has worked, and it is longer than what it probably would have been had we seen it. But yeah, it's just a shame that it hasn't kind of sold as many passenger-wise. You know, the likes of Air China, Lufthansa have got, you know, multiples in their fleet and stuff, but yeah, it just seems the freighters at the moment are more desirable than passengers.
Yeah, I think that's where the money is at the moment, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah. So the freighter version, as Rob Brown Plane Spotting has mentioned, was launched by Cargolux. It has a 16% more payload capacity than the 747-400 freighter, allowing it to carry 7 more standard air cargo containers with a maximum payload capacity of 154 tons of cargo. As on previous 747 freighters, the Dash 8 freighter features an overhead nose door and a side door on the main deck, plus a side door on the lower deck to aid loading and unloading. Yeah, and then it says then my notes have got the Cargolux being the launch customer of the freighter. But the passenger version, named 747-8 Intercontinental, can carry up to 467 passengers in a 3-class configuration and fly more than 8,000 nautical miles. And it has surpassed the A340-600 as the world's longest airliner.
Okay, right.
Yes. So as of June 2020, the 747-8 has received 153 total orders, including 106 for the freighter and 47 for the passenger version. So that kind of gives you an idea for what's popular.
What it's going to be used for. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of orders, is it?
No, it's not. But they have said, I think there's 11 of the orders that are outstanding at the moment, and I think that's UPS, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And they have said once they order that, then they will not take any more orders for it. So, the days of being able to order the 747 in any capacity is sort of slowly coming to an end.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's going to be the end of an era, isn't it? Next 25 to 30 years, I think that's going to be it, isn't it? I just don't think there'll be. Well, who knows where aviation will be within the next 25 to 30 years, where things are moving and speed. These airline builders can develop their aircraft and what have you. Who knows what's coming next?
Yeah, that's it.
But but the 747's definitely on its way out, I'm afraid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very difficult to tell sort of where we're going to be sort of in the next 5-10 years, let alone 25 to 30
absolutely.
years. But yeah, it'd be a shame once they all go. But yeah, so 747-8 will be around for a long time, I reckon. Just because they are sort of younger than the rest. So yeah, that sort of concludes going through the versions of the 747. Hopefully, we've all learnt something, because I know I have, like going through the types and stuff.
Definitely.
And now we get onto the more interesting stuff as well, which is versions that we didn't know existed. There's a comment in there from Rob Brown Planespot, and it says one of the Cargo Lux 747-8s, Lima X-Ray Victor Charlie Lima, pays homage to Joe Sutter with a decal of him on the aircraft fuselage. Of course, Joe Sutter being the one that helped design the 747.
That's right. Yeah.
So a nice little touch there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do like a Cargo Lux 747. They're always painted nice.
Yeah, the cutaway one is my favourite.
Yeah, I nearly bought that once. I built a 747-8 model, and I nearly bought the cutaway version. But I decided not to, and I just went for a plain one instead.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Keep getting your comments in. We're going to be... I mean, I thought we were going to be here for 2 hours. Might slightly go over that a little, but that's fine. We'll go through the versions and stuff. What I will say for anyone that's joined us late, I will just announce this very, very quickly again, as we mentioned it at the start of the show. Coming up on Wednesday, we have a midweek show with the one and only Jeb Brooks. He is joining us for chats on his travelling adventures, and he'll be talking to us all about that and everything he's been up to, including, of course, the world of aviation. And we said at the top of the show we're really looking forward to it, and that hasn't changed really. I think I'm looking forward to that a lot more now.
It'll be a cracking show, that it really, really will.
Yeah, very, very much looking forward to that. And that,
Yeah.
so midweek special coming up, 7:30 UK time in the evening this coming Wednesday. So yeah, don't miss it. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yes, let's go on to the versions of the 747 that we didn't know existed, or we may not have heard of. So a couple of really, really interesting ones in this sort of batch. Starting off, of course, with a Shuttle Carrier, which, of course, everyone sort of knows about, but not many people do. So the Shuttle Carrier was two 747s modified to one of them to carry the Enterprise, and the rest, the other one was to carry sort of the rest of the operational space shuttle orbiters. One was a converted 100 short-range aircraft, I think from Japan Airlines, if I'm correct, and the other one was a 747-100, which then belonged to American Airlines, who at the time travel demand wasn't great, so they actually sold one to NASA, and that's why you've got the chrome 747 with the American Airlines cheat line on it still.
Interesting.
Yes, and of course went off to, is it Palmdale in California, I think it is. Someone will correct me, where the 747 carrying the spacecraft, I think, is on display now, because both have been retired. So I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, it does sound right, that, to be quite honest.
Palmdale sounds about right. I'm fairly certain, but I might be wrong, and someone can correct me. Moving on to I think the most interesting one, or one of the most interesting ones actually, that I didn't know existed, is of course the Boeing KC-33A. And reading up on this, I thought, do you know what? This is really, really interesting. So this was a proposed 747, which was adapted as an aerial refueling tanker and was a bid against the McDonnell Douglas DC-10. Douglas DC-10, I should say, during the 1970s Advanced Cargo Transport Aircraft program. which of course ultimately led to the KC-10 extender. So this was up basically against the DC-10 to become the US Air Force's aerial refueling tanker. And had it won, you'd probably see a lot of them around now. What do you kind of make on this sort of thing? Did you think it would have worked?
Probably not, because I mean, you've got the actual range of the plane, which, I mean, you would have got the range out of the 747, but the actual capacity and things like that, the actual capacity for fuel inside it and what have you, and the actual weight of the aircraft and what have you, it might not have been as efficient as probably what they wanted. I think also as well, when you've got like an F-15 or whatever coming up 50 feet behind back of it, and you've got these four massive engines in front of you, the jet wash and the turbulence would have been horrendous, I would imagine, compared to your DC-10. So I don't know, maybe it could have been something to do with that, just the stability of the air around the back of the aircraft, for these fighter jets to come up behind it.
It's very possible that was a factor in it, into why the DC-10s were picked as over the 747. I think it would have made an interesting concept to have 747s going around refueling aircraft and that, which of course then also goes on to another reason why, another reason or another way that the Air Force wanted to use the 747, which I'll get onto shortly. But it's an interesting concept. I didn't know that this was a thing until doing research and stuff, and it just makes me think. You imagine all those like DC-10s that are going around now, and imagine they're like 747s.
Yeah,
it'd definitely be very interesting. But sadly it didn't happen. And the Air Force chose the DC-10, which again I reckon is probably down to the fact that it just made for more stability in the air when trying to sort of refuel, because it's not easy if you watch videos and stuff of the pilots in the fighter jets trying to engage with the refueling boom, and you get whacked by jet wash from a 747. Maybe it's just more dangerous, and they just thought, well, it just seems to be safer to do it with the DC-10, just because, like you say, two engines at the back, you're not really going to be messing with the third one, so the air's a bit more stable.
Absolutely, yeah. Although, looking at this here, Iran bought 4 747-100 aircraft with air refueling boom conversions to support its fleet of F-4 Phantoms. And there is an actual report of Iranians using a 747 tanker in an airstrike during the Iran-Iraq war. So Iran made use of them, didn't they?
Yeah. It's fascinating that the US Air Force didn't go for it, and if the reports are true, and the Iranians did, but then there's reports to say it did, but no one knows if it did. So it's one of those.
That's the thing. It's one of them, isn't it? Yeah, it's a grey area, isn't it?
Yeah. It was fascinating to read up on it when I was going through it. Absolutely fascinating to read up on it. So, absolutely fascinating. Let us know what you think of the variants that you might not have heard of in the chat while we go through them. There isn't many, so we've got a few more to go through first. But we'll get on to the next batch. So don't have a picture of this one, but the US Air Force designated the 747-100 as the Boeing C-19. I don't think they were ever used by the Air Force, which is why there's no picture, but that's what they were called. And obviously that probably would have also been the case with any of the 100s that would have made the Air Force sort of thing. So it's very close to the C-17, which came out years later. No pictures. I don't think one ever happened. But for those that are watching on YouTube, and you can see it on the screen, you've got a picture of the very, very rare and sadly now scrapped Boeing YAL-1. which is a converted Boeing 747-400, and it's an experimental airborne laser. Lots of stories on this one. You could read loads of stories on the internet and find it absolutely fascinating. The fact is that they scrapped it because they couldn't find a use for it. So, a bit of a waste of a 747, really.
I'm just looking at a picture of that now. It's a fascinating looking thing, isn't it?
It is.
Definitely.
It's yeah. It was a planned component of the U.S. national missile defense, and it was. The laser was first test fired in flight at an airborne target in 2007, and then they used a high energy laser to intercept a test target in January 2010. And what it did as well at the same time is, because you can see on the front of the nose, that's where the laser was. And then in February 2010, it successfully destroyed 2 test missiles as well. So it had the grounds to be successful for the Air Force, but they just they chose not to in the end. They cancelled it with Mr. Tiat. I'm going to say Tiat. That might be wrong. Tiat. No, I'll say that again. I've written my notes down wrong. Secretary of Defense summarized fundamental concerns with the practicality of the program, saying that I don't know anybody at the Department of Defense who thinks that this program should or would ever be operationally deployed. The reality is you need a laser something like 20 to 30 times more powerful than the chemical laser in the plane right now to be able to get any distance from the launch site to fire. So right now the airborne laser would have to orbit inside the border of Iran in order to be able to try and use the laser to shoot down a missile in the boost phase. And if you were to operationalize this, you would be looking at 10 to 20 747s at $1.5 billion a piece and $100 million a year to operate. And there's nobody in uniform that I know who believes that to be a workable concept. So because of that theory and because of that, the Air Force didn't request further funds for the airborne laser, and they put it in storage, removed the engines, and then broke it up in 2014.
What a shame.
Yeah, so because the laser program didn't work, they didn't really think, oh, just try and put another nose on it or something. I don't know how much that would be like, if it would be practical to do that to a plane that's been built for the Air Force and that. But I thought maybe you would have kept it as like a display piece as what could have been. But no, they took the engines off it and then scrapped the entire thing. So
yeah,
hardly got.
It probably had technology in what we're not privy to, didn't it?
Yeah, didn't really get a massive cycle of flying hours in there, and then they decided to just make pretend it never happened, sort of thing.
What a waste!
Big old waste. Yeah, big old waste for 747. But yeah, again another fascinating idea. And then talking of fascinating ideas is where we get onto the next lot. So of course, as we mentioned earlier on in the show, the Dream Lifter, which was a converted air, I want to say China Airlines 747-400. Again with like a larger tail, which sort of is resemblance of the 747 SP. No winglets on the wing, but as you can see, it's got the bulky sort of fuselage to accommodate Boeing 787 Dreamliner parts, which is mainly what it was used for. Don't quite know. I think it may be like one or two. I want to say it's maybe two. Two have been built.
I really don't know. I don't know. I mean,
four. It's four aircraft.
Or is it?
Yeah, 4 aircraft have been modified basically to help sort of carry. So it's almost like Boeing's Beluga. That's the best way of putting it.
It's pretty much, yeah, it's their version of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're still flying around now. They do regular flights out to Taranto in Italy. I believe it's in Italy. to pick up parts and things like that and fly them back across the pond, sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
So they're over in European airspace quite a bit, but yeah, it's an interesting sort of way to do it, and it's like I said, it's just to carry parts of the 787 Dreamliner to the Boeing plant in Everett, Everett, Washington. So yeah, literally the only way to put it is Boeing's Beluga.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, isn't it?
It is indeed. And then finally, and the one that we'll wrap it up on, and this was brought to my attention through a video that I saw on YouTube, was what they call the 747 aircraft, the airborne aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
So absolutely fascinating. So in the belly of the aircraft would be 10 microfighters, as they call them. And it was to me it was very ambitious to even consider this, because I don't know how it would work, but they would the 747 would have the ability to launch them, retrieve them, rearm them, and refuel them. It's the retrieving bit that I find fascinating, because they'd have to hook themselves onto sort of a retrieving arm of the 747. But I mean, you and I both play Grand Theft Auto, but you and I both play. We both fly like the Chinooks and stuff. Do you remember trying to hook a car onto the hook and stuff?
Absolutely.
And how difficult that was.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I say, I can't imagine how it would work ever. It's like you say, they'd have to be. I don't know. I mean, you can refuel a plane, so you can stick a nozzle. Well, how big's a nozzle on a fighter jet? Probably 6 inches.
Yeah.
If you can get that in one of those baskets where they refuel, I'm damn sure they could have used a similar kind of thing to drag these little fighter jets back into fuselages of a 747. To be honest, I think it is doable, isn't it? But I don't think it's very practical either.
No, it's a strange one where it's like trying to pick a needle out of a haystack. And the thing is like, if you're in the air and you're hitting turbulence and stuff, it's like, yeah, I don't see how it would have worked. What they also did at the same time, they also tried it with, or they also had plans to convert a Lockheed C5 Galaxy as well into doing this. And yeah, they sort of in the end decided that it'd be too much, and scrapped the idea of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a wise move, that scrapping that. I mean, just the logistics of having a handful of these microjets in back of a fuselage of a 747 or even a C5, which are good, heavy lifters, and then you've got all the armaments, what they're going to want to come and restock on the road, because a little microjet's not going to be able to carry much firepower, is it? I would imagine. So it's going to have to keep coming back for more firepower, and then it's going to want refueling again. So just you can imagine the weight of the actual plane when it was taking off, even with all this equipment in back and all this extra fuel and these little microjets in back and everything else what goes with it. It's just not a very good idea, is it?
No. I mean, like we said, it was ambitious at the time, and this was sort of just as the 747 came out, the US Air Force sort of looked at it and went, that'd be a really good idea to put it into that sort of thing. I'd like to have seen what it would have been like had it actually gone ahead, but there's so many problems that you face doing it.
Yeah, and you're going back to 1973 here as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
It was a while ago, weren't it?
Yeah, everyone's looking for ways to kind of be a bit different, yeah, unfortunately, this was just probably too much of a stretch, really, to try and sort of get one up on everyone else.
Yeah, definitely something like that. And back in '73 as well, I would imagine everyone was smoking pot. So It was probably a good idea at the time, weren't it, when they were all stoned?
Well,
Back in early 70s.
there's one way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah, not a very good idea.
But yeah, that pretty much concludes us going through the history and the different variants of the 747. Now, just before we do wrap up, we will go through sort of the list of operators and stuff, just to give you an idea for who operated what, really. I'm not going to go through each and every single one of them. But let me just go through it. So, as of June 2021, so literally last month, there were 436 Boeing 747 aircraft in active airline service as of 2021, comprising of 6 747-100s, so there are still 100s flying around, 19 747-200s, 4 747-300s, 265 747-400s, and 142 747-8s. The 100s, for anybody that, I don't know how, did I say 9? 6 100s. That doesn't sound right to me. No, I don't think that's correct. I think they've got that wrong somewhere on my notes. No. Alright, so the 747-100, there is one flying around with the Iranian Air Force. So they've got the one, or the only flying one in the world. 747 SP, there is currently 5 knocking about. There is one with the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, obviously Sophia for NASA, 2 for the Pratt & Whitney Engine Company, and 1 for the Royal Flight of Oman. So that is still, it's still owned as a private plane. So the classics, 747-200s, Aerostan, I think, are the Georgian airline, or no, they're not, the Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, Kyrgyzstan airline. They got 2. Like I say, we're just going to go through a short one. Iranian Air Force have got 3. Iran Air have got 1. Rolls-Royce have got 1 for a test bed. And of course the US Air Force have got theirs flying around as well. But if we go through sort of what was ordered as opposed to, what's flying around now. Airlines, so we'll start off with the 100 series. Aer Lingus had 2. So wasn't very popular with them, but I don't think they lasted very long either, if I'm correct. In terms of them, Air Canada bought 5, Air France bought 16. I'm just going to see if I can. There we go. That's better. So we'll just go through sort of the top 3 of each, really. Boeing 747-100, Pan Am were the biggest operators of 33. United Airlines with 22. British Airways with 18 of them. Then you got the likes of American, TWA, Northwest, Japan Airlines, and Air Canada following suit. So as you can tell, like obviously with Pan Am being the launch customer, they sort of put a lot of faith into it.
Yeah, that was the 100, weren't it?
Yeah, the one that they sort of started their necks out for.
I mean, it's proved itself, hasn't it? So getting 33 of these 100s, it certainly paid off for them, didn't it?
Certainly did. Yes. So yeah, in total 167 there. A couple of airlines operated one, like Ward Air, which were Canadian, and of course Braniff as well only operated the one as well. So that's sort of bottom both ends of the spectrum. Iberia, you'll be surprised, had 2 as well. Lufthansa only had 3. So you can tell there's not a lot of faith in it from a lot of airlines, but obviously the more it worked out, the more they sort of went ahead and thought, actually, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Comparing that to the short range aircraft, like I said, 29 built, 17 went to All Nippon, and 12 went to Japan Airlines. So quite sort of like a niche market for that one. Let's go to the 200 next, the passenger version. Japan Airlines were the biggest operator with 24, Northwest 19, Qantas 19, Singapore 19, and then British Airways with 15, making up the numbers. Then, sort of on the flip side of that, Royal Jordanian had 1, Braniff again had 1, the US Air Force, 2 with the Air Force 1, Swiss Air only had 2, Air France only had 2, United Airlines had 2, Scandinavian had 3. So, again, different sort of spectrums, sort of, of who put their faith in it and who didn't.
Yeah, I think they were a bit, particularly out in Europe. I think they were a bit worried, weren't they, at first? I think they wanted to give it a few years, didn't they, just to see how it sort of went and things like that. And when they saw that they were successful, then everyone got them, didn't they? Everyone wanted them.
Well, it changes with the freighters, because the 200 freighter was operated the most by Air France with 10, Northwest with 8, Japan Airlines Cargo with 7, Lufthansa Cargo with 6. Gives you an idea. British Airways only had the 1 of the freighters because freight wasn't really their thing to do at the time. Alitalia had 1, El Al had 1, Air China had 1. So the freighter version didn't really kick off until sort of later on in its lifetime sort of thing. But the 200 Combi actually wasn't operated the most by KLM. Lufthansa had 14, Air France had 11, KLM had 7, Alitalia had 5, British Airways even had 3 of the Combis. So yeah, it's Iberia 1, Air China 1, Royal Air Maroc 1. So there's a good list of of airlines here, and it's interesting to see who put their faith in it and who didn't. In terms of the 300, the passenger version, just standalone passenger version, Singapore Airlines were the biggest orders, or the biggest operators. I'll get there eventually. 11 of those, Saudi Arabian 10, Japan Airlines again right up there again 9, Qantas was 6, Cathay Pacific was 6, and then down the bottom, UTA had 1, that eventually went to Air France. Thai Airways had 2, Korean Airways 2, South African Airways 2. So you can tell that this is now starting to get to the point where 300 wasn't very popular. Just very quickly, the Combis, KLM operated 3 of the Combis apparently, according to this. Singapore Airlines 3, Swiss Air 3, so they had a few again. Sabina with 2. The short range version, 300 is only operated by Japan Airlines. And then British Airways biggest operator of the 400, 57, United Airlines 44, Singapore Airlines 42, Japan Airlines 34, Korean Air 27, Lufthansa 23. And then down the very bottom, presidential flight was 1, unidentified customer had 1 as well, we still don't know who that is. UTA had 1, Garuda had a couple, New Zealand had a few as well. So it's a good mix, and you, like I said, the more you read the list, the more you sort of see the variants and who is loyal to it, such as Japan Airlines.
Absolutely, Japan they've been the biggest customer, aren't they?
Absolutely. Qantas, the only operator of the ER version of the 747-400, was 6. 747 Freighter was operated the most by China Airlines, Singapore Airlines, and Cargo Lux. 747-8 Freighter, UPS have got 28. They still got a few on order. Cargo Lux have got 14. Cathay Pacific have got 14. Atlas Air with 10. Volga Dnepa UK with 10. Nippon Cargo Airlines with 8. Korean Air with 7. Airbridge Cargo with 7. Silkway Airlines with 5. And unidentified customers with 4. And that is, I mean, like I say, it's proven popular with every airline it seems to go with.
It's been a brilliant workhorse over the years. Definitely, it's been a fantastic piece of kit. It really has. I'm looking on this, maybe the same thing you were looking at here, with a total of 1,572 747s sold altogether through its entirety, from 747-100 right up to the 747 -8s. A total of 15 to 1572 altogether.
Yeah, a large number of them were built, so that would make sense. But yeah, it's a workhorse. It always has been a workhorse, and it will probably continue to be a workhorse right up until the last one sort of leaves, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can see status, some of them, and they just look as much as they look as nice today as what they did 50 years ago. You can see that it's looking tired, can't you? And they've done the work, haven't they?
They've done what they've come to do. So yeah, it'll be a sad day once the last one.
It certainly will be. Yeah, and like you said before, it's such a shame that it's not had a proper send off. You know, it's not been retired properly at all, has it? And there's unfinished business there, isn't there? Definitely.
Absolutely. But yes, well, we're going to start to wrap things up here now. We've been doing this for 2 hours and 23 minutes, and we're going to start to wrap everything up. Now, we'll do this for a third time, just so we can sort of get this out there for everybody that, again, may be coming in a little bit late. But Jeb Brooks is joining us on Wednesday's special show during the week. So if you've got any questions for him, bring them into the chat on Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m. There'll be posts going out on Instagram and Twitter, so follow us on there to keep up to date with show times and everything else. Yeah, really looking forward to this one. Really looking forward to it, and he's looking forward to coming onto the show as well. So yeah, it's going to be a fantastic evening full of aviation chat and getting the stories from him of his adventures here, there, and everywhere.
It'll be a really good show. That, looking forward to that.
Very much looking forward to that. But we are going to start to wrap everything up here. And Ian, I'll let you read out just the last few comments in there.
Yeah, it was actually the last comment from Bob Brown I was reading, that we never mentioned the Highland Express 747.
That's very true. Highland Express were a Scottish airline, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a Sabine 747. I don't think
never got a look in.
Long.
No. Yeah, so Rob's saying it's the 747-800 has all the lines in all the right places and it just works, and I totally agree with him there. It just seems to flow really well from tip of its nose right to tip of its tail. It just seems to flow really well with its, like you say, it's got the rate wingtips and things like that. It's such a elegant thing. The cutaway is looking very washed out these days. Not without my mask is cracking.
Yeah, it's a good little livery, that.
Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah. It's got the mask at the front, hasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking then with that. Yeah, it's got the COVID mask thing, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The 747 Shuttle Carrier appeared in the James Bond Moonraker film. Yeah, they were. That particular film is where James Bond was in a space shuttle, weren't he?
I think so. I'm not really a James Bond fan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you know, right, yes. It's last one past that. And he thinks that the Dreamlifter is operated by Atlas Air.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that either. I didn't know that. That's quite an interesting one, isn't it? So
every episode is a learning experience.
It certainly is, isn't it?
It's definitely a school day. But yes, that's all the comments. So we're going to start to wrap things up now. Just want to give a big thank you to everybody that's been listening for the near 2.5 hours and contributed in the chat as well over the discussion of Queen of the Skies 747. It's all been very, very good fun. And yeah, now we press on and look forward to Wednesday's show with Jeb Brooks.
Yeah, Jeb Brooks on Wednesday.
Yeah, looking forward to that a lot. So, we'll start to wrap things up. So we'll jump into shout outs like we always do now to start to close the show. So Ian, we'll start with you.
Just a shout out to you, Tom, for letting me take over tonight. So that's it's been really, really interesting, actually. Learned a lot. Hope Joe's okay and see him again on Wednesday. Hopefully everything's all right with him. And a massive thanks to everyone who's put comments in the chat and just enjoyed the show with us, to be quite honest. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll do a few shout outs myself, everyone that's been watching, everybody that's been sort of, like I said, with us for the last 2.5 hours. Massive thank you to you all. If you haven't already, would much appreciate a like on the video, help with the video, and also help with the algorithm of YouTube. That would be massively appreciated. A big shout out to all of the frontline workers across the world, including obviously our NHS here in the UK, for the constant battle that we're going through with what seems to be a third wave. But I won't say too much on it because otherwise I'll probably strike. But keep doing what you're doing, and we'll eventually sort of get back out of this mess that we're in. Have I got anybody else to shout out? I feel like I do.
No,
yes I do.
You don't need to thank your co-host for joining you tonight.
Well, I wasn't going to, but
fair enough then.
No, a big shout out to you, Ian, for stepping in at the last minute.
Yes.
And co-hosting again 2 weeks in a row now.
Yeah, I know.
You have to replace you. I'm gonna put your face on the feed.
No, I'm quite happy in my comments corner. I'll stick to that, thanks.
Oh dear. But past 2 weeks you've stepped in, so big shout out to you and a big thank you and a big well done.
No problem at all.
I know she's watching, but a big shout out to Jenny French as well, because she's been watching since the first episode. So big shout out to you yourself.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, really, I don't think there's anybody else. So just again a big thank you to you all. 7:30 Wednesday evening, the 28th. We'll have Jeb Brooks with us, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And for anybody that's listening back on Spotify as well, and you've made it to the 2.5 hour mark, a big thank you to you as well. So you can listen to this show back on Spotify and Take Us Anywhere with you from tomorrow evening when it goes live. And apart from that, like I said, if you want to have a chat with us, you've got the links in the description to Twitter and Instagram. Give us a follow, give us a message, and if you want to be on the show, also drop us a message as well. But other than that, we're going to say our goodbyes. So Ian, we'll start with you.
Yep, just thanks for tuning in, everybody, and see you all next time. Goodbye.
And for myself, continue to look after yourselves, continue to stay safe, and we will see you Wednesday evening, 7:30, for our very, very, very special show with Jeb Brooks. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
See you, bye.